3PNR with Adam R. This episode of 3PNR is featured on the UnX Network. Welcome to 3PNR. I'm your host, Adam R., and with me on this episode, I have Bill Konkolesky and Denise Stoner, both MUFON members, respectively, and both have experiences themselves. Denise, Bill, how you guys doing?
Great.
Doing great.
So tonight's subject is experiencers. I've been doing a lot of research, and since the start of this podcast, my thought has I've evolved the way I think. I mean, in the beginning, it was a curiosity. Now it's more of a phenomena, and I have to believe that what's happening, it's tangible. It's real. There's no question on it. We'll start with Denise. We'll start with you and your experience. I have an idea what got you investigating, but what were your experiences that brought you onto the path of ufology?
Well, from age 2.5, I've been taken, and I have something that triggered that memory. First time alone without my mom and someone else babysitting for me while she was having my sister. And so I remember very clearly seeing a huge craft outside my window. I was so little, I was standing on the sofa looking through the slats on the blinds and saw this, and I thought it was Humpty Dumpty up in the sky. And so I asked my grandfather why he didn't have a face. My grandfather looked out the window, and I can still remember the fear in his face today. So from then on, it just really never stopped. It continued on. And then when I was old enough and just continuing with these experiences and events, that I felt I needed to get involved in finding out what it was all about, if I could.
So yeah, dig into and it's good because, again, I say this, it makes you relatable for those who've had these experiences. It's easy to hear an investigator who's had the experience.
Very helpful. It makes a big difference in gaining their trust, making them feel comfortable with talking to you and kind of spilling their guts and telling their story and not feeling weird about it.
Right. And Bill, for you, your experience, what was yours and what led you on the path?
Okay, mine was also at age 2, and since I'm born in March, and I remember it was a warm month, I'd say, yeah, it was about 2.5 as well. I was in my room, laying in my crib, and I had not yet gone to sleep, and a little gray guy came in the room with big black eyes, stared down at me into the cribs, and I screamed for my parents. My mother told me to go back to sleep. She didn't even come in the room. And then the little gray guy, after a couple moments, just sort of bemused, left the room. And then I had experiences at age 4, age 7, 9, 10, all sorts of experiences in my teens and early 20s, which led me to contact MUFON. And so, yeah, I've been a member of MUFON since 93 now and state director of Michigan since 2004.
Yeah, there's a pattern I see emerging, and it's where people want to discredit people when they say these stories, but what humans don't understand, even at age 2, when something has such a profound effect on you, it could embed in your memories, period. Mm-hmm. And they notice to a certain, it's the how children have recognition for their mothers and fathers by voice and features. But if you see something that affects you, profoundly, yeah, that's embedded. So
yeah.
And MUFON since 93. That's you got time invested.
Yeah. No pension, unfortunately, but
isn't that the truth?
Because here's what I'm going to start doing. This is again. So before I started this podcast, my belief system was the U.S. government released these videos of craft in the air by our Navy pilots, and for me, I was done. You can't deny that now. And it took me some time to kind of warm up to the idea of the abduction or people of experience. And then I start reading about it. And the more I read about it, there's information, and here's the problem. People are thinking modern times. And there's a book that was published in 1912, and I have it written down here. Carl Jasper's book of general psychopathology. And that was published in 1912. It's speaking to this what you guys, the experiences people are having as false memories. Now, bear in mind, that's written in 1912. And these accounts have been spoken about long before the popularity of it hitting mainstream media. That being with Barney and Betty Hill really kind of opening the gateways. And it makes me curious to know why we don't have like a collection of data finding what the patterns of similarities between, like, even yourself and Denise, like Bill and Denise. There's some sort of similarity there, something that they're. And another thing I noticed too, and even with Travis Walton, this is selection from youth, from childhood, maybe even be prior to your conception. So my belief system is that we're not only is our planet under a constant study, but individuals as well. And so here's what I do. I always look at things about how humanity does things. We select animals in the wild to monitor. We tag them. We watch them as their lives go and how they evolve right up until their death. We don't get involved with them directly unless, something medically needs to be done, and or we're trying to, I guess, find them in a place where we would otherwise not be able to find them. So I say all this confidently now. So Denise, in your time and your experiences and people you've spoken to, are you finding a pattern in people? Anything that you might have noticed?
I find a pattern. I'm researching something a little bit outside the box right now, and that is people who come to me. I'm a certified hypnotist, and they want to discover whether or not they had a past life, and if so, what was that? So I make a trade with them to let me do some of my research and try to find out if their experience with UFOs and what has happened to them in this lifetime was the same in a possible past lifetime. And I'm finding out that that's true, and it's pretty interesting. I was hypnotized to check on the same thing and found that in my past life, which I do believe in. This is exactly what happened. So there are a lot of commonalities. Kathy and I have done a study. One is a craving for salt. We don't know why that is. We put it in there just to see. It's not a trick question in the study that we did. So why is that? Why does it change the course of our systems, blood work and so forth? That's something we still have to discover. So there are many commonalities and many groups of people of all different kinds.
That sounds like something at the molecular level, right?
Mm-hmm.
When the body craves something, it's typically because it's either had it before and or it's not having enough of it.
Well, this is a little odd because the way this works is if you put something in front of a person to eat, a plate full of food, and they pick up the salt shaker before they even taste it and dump it all over. That's just a little bit of an exaggeration, but not by much. I realized that I was doing that, and I've made myself stop it because it's not good for you. But I don't get any kind of high readings on my blood work. So I don't know why that is.
And here's something I read too. Bill, are you finding patterns as well?
Sure. Though one has to be careful regarding patterns because there's a bit of confirmation bias that you could find yourself in. Right. You come up with a great theory and you can find evidence for it. You can find evidence for all sorts of variations of themes and things like that. Kind of like Paula Harris had said, all of the above, when people were asking her, do you think they're time travelers? Do you think they're beings from another world, another dimension? Mm-hmm. She would say, all of the above. Because, this is one of those types of things where the more you learn about it, the more questions you have. And a lot of different things are happening to a lot of people that do have similarities enough to be able to discuss it, but not enough details to be really firm about what exactly is going on. We need some degree of context to be able to have a conversation, because otherwise we can't even talk about it. Like the term aliens, I accept it as a good common term. If somebody uses the term aliens, and to me, that doesn't mean they're necessarily saying that they're from another planet or whatever, or another dimension. We just have to have some sort of language so that we can even begin to talk about what's going on. But really, I think we're a long way from really deeply understanding this phenomenon, even though so many people have it, and we have a lot of great evidence, and we have some sort of markers. But boy, you go on quite a ride down the rabbit hole when you start looking into this phenomenon.
Yeah,
that's true. That is absolutely true. What do we call them, and where are they from? Another suggestion was that they're us in the future coming back, and Paula commented on that also. Do we have the answers? No, we don't.
So I have a theory now. It was a bit of a revelation, because I have this bad habit of being dead tired, going to bed, and then there's the idea, right? And then next thing you know, it's 4 a.m. and I'm writing these things down. So my theory is this, and I always try to put myself in the position of the alien. Every time I hear a case or speak to someone about it, I really have to I have to reverse the roles. Now, I'm an alien, and I have these advanced robotic, biological robots, right? The smaller gray aliens anyway. And the taller ones are probably the biology. So I have these advanced robots, and we're studying humans. This is National Geographic Space, and Planet Earth is the channel we're watching currently. So other races, and when people are like, well, why is there so many other races? Well, let's think about for a second what the gray alien, the smaller one, is, an advanced robot. Other aliens come here, or they stumble onto this, whether it be us from the future or whatever their race may be. And you have one breed of alien saying, well, I'll tell you what, don't get involved in them directly. We have a good thing going here. Just rent some of our gray aliens. We'll send them down there to do whatever field work you see fit. Here's some guidelines. Here's some rules. How to use our they're renting these things out, how to not abuse it. I've come to that kind of idea. I hear a lot of similarity, and I'm a pattern searching person. I always look for a pattern. And the behavior of these advanced, and at the very beginning, I think I even told Bill this when I first met him, I depicted the small gray aliens as an advanced robot with the consciousness upload, or they're therefore like an avatar. So their behavior physically would differ to whomever it is that's controlling it. And so I'm led to believe that these are the rented objects that come here. I had this discussion with a couple of people about the entirety of the Tic Tac information, for instance. It's hovered above the water. You see something just below the surface, and they're coming from 80,000 feet to 1 foot. That sounds like a transport system to something that's submerged beneath the water, right? I mean, it's always good to look at things not as them being supernatural, but how would this application work for us if we had that technology? It's how we should be looking at it. And what Denise was saying earlier about hypnosis, that caught my attention. Most of the negative reports from people who have experienced abducted or otherwise, it appears to me that these are people that don't do well without having control. Like this, there's been soldiers that were abducted, and I heard the tapes of them screaming, like in god awful fear. But to me, that tells me that this person is not used to not being in control. Where some of the reports of the people that were having a benign experience, they were more relaxed, and they're not a controlling figure. They're more enlightened in regular life, and they're a little more accepting of learning and having new ideas. So these are the patterns I look for in people's behavior, and that's why I always try to reverse the roles of what I think the alien is by putting myself in the alien's position. Bill, when I first spoken to you, you had mentioned something about maybe was it a blue mist?
You mean when I was in the backyard?
Yeah.
When I was 7? Yeah, it was white. It was just like a fog machine, sort of a white mist.
I hear that a lot, more than you know. And it makes me wonder why this is not spoken about widely. I don't hear it anywhere else. I only hear from like yourself or other people have off podcasting. I do a lot of off podcast interviews, and that seems to be common. And you have to wonder why the mist. Well, now let's think about this. If something biological were to come down here, when they have their test robots ahead, they might not be able to breathe our air, or, they don't want to get sick. That mist could be their own atmosphere. This is not, and this is an application our own military and other people of science are considering for other planets. It's the idea of terraforming, but you're more advanced technology. You could do it in a small location. So these are things I hear. Denise, for you, over the course of time, what are things that you're hearing from people, from investigate, what you investigate or what you research? What are you finding as far as people accepting or not accepting?
Oh boy, it's a mixed bag. It's very complicated. Before I forget, I wanted to mention to Bill, because I don't really know his story. I have not heard it. And I wanted to say that I had a type of a blue mist that I saw also. It was more like a column, but it did look like a mist. And I was walked into that. I don't know how his happened, but so I know what he's talking about as far as the mist goes. And now, speaking to others, there are a group that say this is all demonic. It doesn't belong where it is, and we need to get rid of them. Well, that's all well and good, but what about the ones who say that they have been learning a lot? They've had downloads of information on topics that they knew nothing about. There are so many things on what you could call the good guy side, and I get more of that than I do the negative.
Yeah, I would agree. Earlier you'd mentioned about people, past lives, and etc. Here's where I sit with that. Look at the cosmic, and I've said this a lot recently. When you see the cosmic web and the way it's designed, and then you look at the construct of our brain, literally the most complex computer on the earth currently, a lot of similarities. And if you think what the soul is, I think, and I've said this before, and I don't mean to beat it down, but I think our soul and our consciousness are one and the same. It's just pure energy. And when you perish from here, your energy, I imagine, gets recycled. And so, that being said, some people that are having this past life experience, when you think about how energy is, like, information's used with fiber optic cables, it's using light and pure energy to give information almost instantly at crazy distances, right? So now, when our energy is recycled and it's in a new machine, or new body, some of that information is still attached, and it could, like anything else, when there's information in the background of a computer, it sometimes can be detected. And I kind of lean towards that. And what you were saying about the demons, I've come across that a lot. Bill, are you getting a lot of that too?
Sometimes, yeah. Certainly, we bring our own understanding of the world with us into any experience. And I know of one account where an experiencer had been with somebody who was possibly a bit more religiously oriented than they were. And as being showed up, that other individual was screaming about demons. And she was like, I don't think they're demons, but from the other person's perspective, that's what they were. They were demons. So even in a single experience where two people are encountering the same thing, the filters that we have certainly come into play, and two people can experience the same thing in slightly different ways. And for the person who was the general experiencer, the other person was just sort of happened to have been there at the time. The general experiencer, certainly didn't have this demonic feeling, had this sort of understanding, a little bit better understanding, or much better understanding of what these things sort of represented. But the other person was just like, I've been brought up to believe that there are demons. Here's some weird thing. It's a demon.
Right.
But if we really want to get into the theology interpretations of it, that's a pretty big discussion too. And but Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, some people interpret it that way for sure.
You know,
and many don't.
here's where I sit with. I've read it. The more I read into that, the more I had one person. I did an off. You know, I do a lot of interviews off podcasts, like I said, and he had such a compelling story about it being demons. Like, if I didn't know 1,000% better, I would believe what he was telling me wholeheartedly, because it was very compelling. He even had pretty decent evidence to present. But problem with that is he's referencing the Bible, and we're on a 4 billion-ish year old planet, and who knows what entities had lived here prior. Could have been bipedal, could have been wiped out. I mean, and if you listen to Graham Hancock's accounts, and I'm really a big fan of his now, civilizations have come and gone from here over and over again. As far as organized religion, I think that's part of the reason the government will never give us a full disclosure. They just can't. You know, how would the general public react to aliens? I did a little polling, and it's kind of 50-50. Some people are open-minded to it, and other people would completely, even if tomorrow, the non-believers, like there's a sector of Christians that they just, God made here, and that's it. That's their mindset. So even if tomorrow, if aliens were to park right at the White House lawn and shake hands and have a public discussion, there would still be pushback because people would say they were demons and not to trust them. It's scary. That's humanity's train of mind, where we're not, as a whole, we're not very open-minded. I mean, examples that we're still racist, and we still have other divisions like politics. And I say that a lot too, because a friend of mine asked me, goes, well, when do you think they'll communicate with us? So I don't think anytime soon, not directly anyway. Why would they, until we behave as a species, they would really have no motivation other than to study us. Because that's what I would do, right? If me, Bill, and Denise are on a ship, we see this planet, and there's beings on there. They're using combustion engine cars. They're flying around, and they're really interesting. We're going to, like we do in the safaris with big cats, we're going to watch. We don't want to get involved, but we're going to watch how they evolve for as long as possible. So, I mean, Denise, moving forward, what do you think?
Well, I've spoken to the religious aspect of it. I have spoken to those who call me up and say, I know the answer to everything, and I'm going to tell you. So we have them. And then we have those who want to share and compare and try to make some sense out of what has occurred. As far as the demons, some of these people could have had a bad experience. There are good guys and bad guys. We have a big argument going over the reptilians of some say they're absolutely bad, they're no good, they're up to something, and others who say, no, they love us. So they're completely divided. I think Bill might agree with me there. And we don't know why. When it comes to the Greys, you can get the same thing. They call them liars. But when we're taken, we have to decide for ourselves where we're going with it, what we feel, what's happened to us. And many of these people toss in the mix have had a near-death experience. And why are there more who have had near-death experiences and have also been taken? How is that all mixed up? Can we divide that up somehow? And now I think probably Bill can say yes. And I want to ask him so we can say something on the air. I'm getting a lot of cases where people are taken and they are also having paranormal experiences of all different types. So, Bill, is that the case with you too?
Oh, I would say if it's not 100%, it's pretty close. Yeah. And the thing, and I want to just sort of clarify my thoughts. I think there could be dark energies out there doing whatever, and people might call them whatever. And for me to earlier have said that, the phenomena is a big unknown, but for me to take a stand on whether there's something demonic on it seems paradoxical. I just think to clarify that when we bring our ego into this, we can make constructions out of things that we perceive from our backgrounds, which may or may not be the case. And Sure. I think some of what is visiting us is more positive for us, and some not necessarily as benevolent or even benign. And it's a big mixed bag. But that further complicates the issue when somebody is having what you would call a straightforward abduction event, but they also have a high level of paranormal activity, like if they have poltergeist activity, some sort of unpleasant poltergeist activity. It's very easy to think, wow, not only are these aliens, abducting me, but they're also dumping my groceries on the floor. Maybe not the same thing.
Right. Right. It's fair to say, Bill, because if you come from a Catholic background, then yeah, they're demons. And if you come from like the ancient Egyptians, they're gods. And if you come from Florida, they're just the neighbor, so it's true. I guess people have to reference to the best of their knowledge, what they know anyway. And I think a lot of the negative experiences are just, again, I think it's people that they don't want to lose control, because that's one pattern I did notice. People who typically sit in a position of power don't really like the abduction experience because it's taking control from them and it's freaking them out. Or some people are okay with it.
That, and they have to find some sort of coping mechanism. In other words, what are they going to use? Their religion? A lot, yes.
Yeah.
Are they going to try to turn it all into the field of spirits and ghosts? Yep. They're going to go there too, and try to get away with it. And when they start talking to us and we begin to help sort it out for them, they're not really knowing what to do and what to think, except they know something happened to them way out of the ordinary.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of parallels with paranormal and ufology. I'd spoken to Steve Murr about that in great length. And he thinks, and it's a big problem too, I realize, a lot of paranormal investigators and a lot of ufology, they don't cross-communicate. And I think they need to. Because bear in mind, here's us again, we're on the ship. Me, Bill, and Denise are flying around. We're observing this species on another planet. And our sophisticated machine detects another entity there, but it's not really there. We're going to be like, whoa, what's that? And now we're really intrigued. We're not only going to study the beings there, but now we got to see what that other thing is. And so I think a lot of the paranormal activity and a lot of ufology have to be parallel, because they're going to be curious about the other thing as well. And they're going to be present for that as well. In fact, I kind of think that's what Skinwalker Ranch is. I think it's like a places like Skinwalker, and there's evidently a lot of them everywhere. More when I first heard Skinwalker, I thought just that one location. There's things like that in multiple locations, just like that, but they're usually in vast areas. And what better place to study, right?
Well, I guess that's another way that we have to be careful in putting boundaries on specific areas that have activity, because it could be like if you took Skinwalker Ranch and that surrounding area, maybe a couple miles in another direction from there, you'd probably find a lot of activity there too. I think there's pretty much activity everywhere, and it's just a matter of where people put their, I'll say it, artificial boundaries, and say, wow, this area is an area of high activity. Just looking at, for example, what the part that Denise and I are most familiar with, probably in terms of just raw data, wherever you have, if you go into the MUFON software and you say, hey, give me the last 100 sightings in my state, it's always a population map. It's always wherever there's more people are seeing UFOs. But I'm hesitant to call Detroit, a Skinwalker-like area, simply because
right,
there's a lot more witnesses in that area, so a lot more people. And that's just one perspective of it. Somebody could be chomping at the bit to say right now, well, around Skinwalker Ranch, there's not that many people. So I want to be very careful there. But we have phenomena around the world, very easily documented, especially in the United States by MUFON, that the UFO phenomena itself, just that part of it, happens everywhere, every day, and it's a constant, persistent thing. And speaking personally from Michigan, people talk about the Michigan Triangle. And sometimes when people say Michigan Triangle, they mean an area within Lake Michigan. I've also heard it as an area within Lake Erie. I've also heard it to represent the entirety of the Great Lakes in some sort of triangle border area. And so, it's kind of easy to look at a particular geographic region and say, oh, this is a magic spot. This is a spot that's meaningful more than any other surrounding area. But I really, and maybe some areas have a slight edge over another area, but I don't think any place is safe from this activity. I think it happens everywhere.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you can glom together some of this, just like people think if you go to a cemetery that you're going to run into spirits, which is completely opposite of what happens, because the dead don't hang around their graves, basically. I'm the specialist in paranormal research and investigation for the Experiencers Resource Team. So I've done that for years also. And then toss in the mix that where Skinwalker Ranch is, there's some very sacred ground there that belonged to the Native Americans, and some caves where they've got some special artifacts set way in the back, and they don't invite us to go and see, but they'll talk about it. So you add all this in, and all of a sudden, that's a big space that the ETs visit. And here come all the UFOs and the sightings and what might be underground. Yeah, something happened at Skinwalker, but it's happening everywhere, like Bill said.
Yeah, I agree with Bill. I agree with you both. I'd recently spoken to Cheryl Costa, and she has a book, UFO Sightings Desk Reference, where it has all the statistics, and there's more activity than I thought anyway. And she made a point when speaking to me, and it was a good point. A lot of us aren't really looking. We're preoccupied with our phones, our computers, our TVs, our day-to-day life. And I said to her, I'm guilty too. And the only thing I ever really saw was a blue orb, maybe aqua color, but there was also a thunderstorm in Florida. And it didn't move erratically. It was just consumed by the storm. The only thing that gave me pause is that it was sitting somewhere that I thought, it shouldn't be there, especially in a storm. I live right by an airport. So, for me, that's the rest of my life. I'll wonder what that was. Probably a drone or whatever it may be. But she did mention a statistic that most sightings happen, I think it was between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. You're walking a dog, you're out of work, a little bit of downtime, and you have that time to look. No one's looking up in major populated areas anymore. In fact, the majority of people looking down at their phone. So
what I often say is, if the moon disappeared for a month, how many people would notice?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I'll tell you when they would notice, when they got on Facebook. Then it's real. It's sad.
That's funny.
Because that's the truth. People are down in their phone a lot. Yeah. When I was talking about earlier about who would be accepting aliens, I think it would be scientists, people like Elon, because they would want the information, the technology. They would want to share those things. I don't know how much it would get, but that would gather their interest immediately. I don't know, Bill. In recent cases, any recent cases that caught your attention?
So in Michigan, we did have an interesting one. If you're just talking about general cases of interest that we've had.
Yeah.
In Linden, Michigan, in June, there was a gentleman who had called to report his sighting. Now, usually when people call us, and I may have even talked about it on the last time I was on your show. I can't remember. So pardon me if you've heard this one before, let me know. So normally when we get sighting reports in by phone or email or whatever it is, the people are are a little bit long-winded sometimes. They're like, me and my girlfriend were driving down the street. We saw this light. She thought it was red. I thought it was blue. We pulled into a parking lot. We watched it zip around. We were watching it maybe for 5 minutes. It went behind some trees, etc. So this guy's voicemail message was simply, call me. And I could hear in his voice that he had witnessed something that really affected him. So call him up. He's a postal worker. He was going to work. It was 3:30 in the morning. His shift started. And as he was driving down Linden Road, which is a very dark road, no street lights, he sees a bright patch of light up ahead and to the left. And as he drives past it, he sees a silver monolith, he said, about 6 foot tall. And it's got these white glowing orbs of light, 4 of them, moving around it. And he continues to drive. It's freaking him out. He's out there by himself, and there's no lights and nobody around. So he keeps going. And as he passes it, this orange teardrop shaped light slides out onto the road, almost like a guard dog saying, keep going. We're watching you. And he continues to drive to work. His shift gets off and he's driving that same road back home. And he notices where he had seen that thing the night before, there's now a 30-foot patch of dead grass. So he calls us, and me and 2 other investigators show up the next day, take soil samples. We go out into the area. It's slightly swampy, but yeah, there's this 30-foot patch of dead grass. And a weird thing about it, on top of this whole weirdness, is that there was fresh growth of grass through this dead patch of grass.
Oh.
And way too much to think like, oh my gosh, maybe something happened to make this grow overnight. Now, this was not new growth. Something was actually growing through this dead patch for some time. So this phenomena probably didn't create the dead grass. It probably just happened to occur in the 130-foot patch of dead grass along this heavily wooded, fully green patch of road. And when we sent the samples into Missouri to the lab to get tested, they all came back. The ones that had that showed outside of normal just soil or whatever had some chemical content in it, which was normal human industrial chemicals. Nothing that strange. Something that would have indeed killed grass, but nothing extraterrestrial per se. So that one, I thought was one of my favorites from 2021 here in Michigan.
Yeah, that's peculiar. A chemical that would kill grass and then something growing through it. That's strange.
Well, yeah, to me, the strangest part is that this phenomena, decided to seek out that particular patch to land, or however it manifested.
Or maybe observe. I mean, so when this guy left a voice message, you could hear the adrenaline dump. He had a chemical response to what he saw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was just 2 words. It was call me. And I'm like, yep. Yeah, this one's going to be interesting.
I had some panic. What about you, Denise?
Oh my gosh. Well, kind of one that I witnessed myself and a couple of our neighbors.
Pray tell.
I had a call from a friend who works up at a hospital north of us and was on his way home from work. And he called me and he said, could you get outside at all and look up in the sky? There's a black storm cloud coming. Well, that's typical of Florida. He said, I want you to see what's darting in and out, if you can, because I'm seeing it from this end. So I stepped outside. A couple of neighbors were outside, and there was a huge cylinder-shaped object darting in and out of the storm cloud, and he could see it from several miles away. We could each see a different side of it. So that was fascinating. It went closer to where he was driving, and then kind of dipped down over the nose of his truck and then took off.
What part of Florida is that?
I'm just north of Orlando in Winter Park, and he was in the city of Apopka working in the hospital there.
Huh. So I'm in Tampa. All right. And when I first started discussing going to do a documentary, I was like, well, I'll start in Florida. I live here. And then I did the research. I was like, wow, everything happens here. Everything. Bigfoot, UFOs. This is a strange place, Florida. So
it is.
It'd take me 5 years to document this whole state. So
yeah,
I would have to start outside and work my way back.
Yeah.
I mean, especially I'm getting pushed to go to St. Augustine by a lot of people.
Oh, yeah, you should.
Yeah, and I said, why? I was like, UFO? Like, well, both. Well, UFOs, paranormal, and what was this other thing they mentioned to me? Hold on. It was like not Bigfoot, orange ape, something with an orange ape. So
okay.
It's got my attention. Yes, that's what he said. Skunk ape, orange in color.
Yeah. Go to the Ocala Forest too and ask a few questions. We've got a version of, what is that? Bill, you had your picture taken in front of it with the wings.
Oh, Mothman.
Yes, it's our own version of Mothman. I'll look and see if I still have.
I mean, it's Florida, so it's Mosquito Man, no doubt.
Yes, Mosquito Man. Yeah, well, there were three of them, and they landed on the back of this man's car, and just scared the daylights out of him and his passengers. They were over by an old bombing range, just kind of sitting at night talking. And they wondered what the sound was in the back, looked out the window, and here were these three winged creatures scratching the heck out of the trunk of his car. And he took off and he saw them fly into the Ocala Forest. He lived nearby. And when he woke up the next morning, the paint was missing. There were scratch marks and there were odd footprints in his driveway in the dew.
Wow. That's a big I didn't this is bad. Sorry for people listening. I live here. It's not far from Ocala National Forest. It's 673 square miles. That's pretty big. Yeah. In Florida, that's pretty big, for a forest. Because, think Disney typically didn't, most forests out here, Disney consumed in the mid anyway.
True.
So I'm actually interested in that now. I never witnessed anything, and I got to ask, or maybe I should say, maybe they don't like me. Could be that.
No.
So I was talking to some of the paranormal people, like, what if I go to the other side? I asked them, like, why didn't you guys ever say anything to me? And they're going to be like, well, we just didn't like you. You're a jerk.
Be careful what you wish for.
So, yeah, it's true. It's true, right? I'm a weird person. I will run towards the problem. I say this every time I say it. I'm the guy that dies in the movie right away.
Oh, my.
Just goes right for it. I got to see what it is. I'll document on the way there, but I got to see it.
Well, there's some odd things up in that Ocala area. A friend and I were driving up there to go to a meeting. It was daylight, and we saw this something crossing the road that was more or less floating. Couldn't see any feet. And I said, we're going to hit that person. We are going to hit them because they were moving fast. We were moving. There was a car behind us and it got all the way across the road. When we reached the driveway, there's a series of homes with long driveways. When we reached the driveway where this entity had floated to, there was no one there.
Wow. So I got to tell you, man, you know what it is? I don't go out, and I'm guilty. I don't go out and look enough. I'll give you an example of freaky things that have happened to me. And this is Florida. Keep in mind, this is Florida. Myself and a friend are on a walk, and we stop. I don't remember why we stopped. I think it's tire shoe or whatever it is, and we pan left, and there's a bobcat sitting right there looking at us. I took a picture of it with my phone, and she yelled at. She goes, "What are you doing?" I was going to run up to it and try to get a close. That's what I told you in the movie. I Die Fast. I was going to try to run up to this thing and get a picture of it, but it took off. The point I make is we didn't know it was there. It was just sitting right there, maybe 20 feet away. Another example. I'm in Florida. Steve, you know where Stewart, Florida is, yeah?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so this is some years ago. I'm in Stewart, Florida. There's a pool tournament. I drive down there with some friends, and there's a wooded area there, and we're sitting there hanging out, drinking, and I didn't notice it. None of us noticed it, but a friend of mine pointed it. There's a legit Florida cougar. Probably about, I had to guess 50 feet away, but sitting there, looking our direction. Never noticed it there. Then it makes me think about, what about a more intelligent thing that's running around in the forest, you know? That's got to scare you more, because now you're talking about something superior intelligence. It's a beast-like, and you just would never know. And I don't want people to understand that what I'm saying, these two cats I saw, that was in a community, right? A neighborhood, populated, not in the middle of the woods. So I can understand how things could sneak up on you.
Oh yeah. Something can be there and you don't see it till you're on top of it.
Yeah, Bill, up in Michigan, that triangle, I've just uncovered that. I'm just finding out about that. What's the story behind that?
Well, I mean, I guess part of the story is what I said, is that some people put the boundaries over within Lake Michigan.
Right.
Some put it around all the Great Lakes. Some put it in Lake Erie. What I hear most is a Great Lakes, a Lake Michigan version. And sure, you have a big lake like that. Things disappear, boats sink, and the like. But it's not that we don't have UFO sightings over Lake Michigan. In fact, one way to look at it is that Lake Michigan kind of borders half the state if you include Upper and Lower Peninsula. And so a lot of clear viewing area there along just all those many miles of shoreline. And yet, I remember looking back in 2012 when we had our record of 412 sightings here in Michigan.
Wow.
Only 4 sightings were on or near the coast of Lake Michigan. And so less than 1% of our sightings were out over this giant body of water that's been looked at as this sort of paranormal playground. I just, I don't doubt weird things have happened there. Clearly they have, as they do everywhere. I just don't put a lot of stock in it. And if somebody's going to ask me, do I think there's a UFO base under Lake Michigan? The evidence does not seem to support that.
Right. I don't know so here again, I'll put myself in the position of the alien. I don't know that I'd want to build a base there. It's a landlocked body of water. I would want outer coastal things where I could come and go as pleased with plenty of cover. The one thing I did read about the Lake Michigan that I was unaware of it. Storms will brew out there out of nowhere and make the water extremely, extremely rough, like unmanageable almost. And if you'd have told me that before reading that, I'm like, no way, it's a lake. But then you have to consider how vast that lake is and how wind could blow up over it and so on and so forth.
Oh, Lake Superior is insane. Yeah, the waves there are shocking. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, you got really no resistance against the wind, all right? And if a storm brews, forget it. You got tsunamis on a regular basis. Yeah, I don't know. I would understand that. Things disappearing out there. Just that being said, a storm could emerge legitimate. Like here in Florida, Denise will tell you, here in Florida, it'll be sunny and it'll rain like a hurricane, and then be sunny again. And we have this other thing in Florida we're going through right now, where it's summer in the daytime, but it's winter at night, like real winter. So,
yeah, very much so. Very cold and damp.
Yeah. So, it's the other thing too. It's moist air here. So when it gets cold here, it's not just regular cold air. It's freezing cold, moist air. So it's insanity.
Add a wind to that, and it's as cold as New England feels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when you live really close to the coast. It's blowing right on you. So, Bill, I'm gonna ask you guys this question. I like to ask this of investigators. You have $1 million you can invest to your investigative equipment. What do you go with?
Huh.
And you can't say Navy jets, because they're way more than that.
I've never been asked that. I've never really, when you get into this field, you have to get into it with a volunteer spirit and with the understanding that you are going to spend more money than you ever get back from it.
Right.
So to suddenly magically have a lot of money, my first thought wouldn't be to look to technology. My first thought would be to have a very dedicated group of people who can focus on the phenomena and whatever support they need technologically behind it. I really think it's the people that really makes the difference in this field, not necessarily the technology.
I agree. That's a very good point. Because if you could hire a bunch of people to do nothing but investigate Skywatch, you'll get tangible evidence. I believe that. And I'd spoken to Douglas Wilson. The equipment he describes, which that Madar, which I ordered, and it's important you have good filming equipment. So this way, like especially with digital cameras, they can be funny because they're basically trying to replicate something it's looking at because it's not really filming it. So yeah, I think the right equipment and resource, but what you said, perfect, straight on. I mean, big group of people that were dedicated to doing that and that alone. I bet you'd find very interesting stuff. Denise, you feel the same?
I feel the same. People behind you are so important to have there. I can't tell you. We have a big state. It's very long. We have a sector of field investigators. It's very difficult for them to travel. For instance, up through the Panhandle, we're needing people there. And it's hard for us to go on a case that distance, just traveling 10 hours or more, doing your investigation, turning around and coming back. Again, we're volunteers. A piece of equipment I really like is something simple, and it's a trimeter. It's called a trimeter, and it measures the electromagnetic, the radio, etc. fields, because we've discovered that people who have been taken from their car, we get a reading on the car and on the person for up to 2 weeks following their event.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder what, that makes me think in terms of what energy they're using. That's got my curiosity now. I'm going to start interviewing more people that had a negative experience because I imagine it's going to be an off podcasting. I'm sure they're not going to want to sit down for an hour and tell me about their misery, relive that. But I kind of want to get maybe from them the perspective of what their surroundings were like. Because for you and Bill, for the most part, right, it's benign. It wasn't evil intent. So it must be different. And again, for people that don't want to lose control, maybe that's a factor. And maybe that's why that energy is exhibited, right? Because they have to restrain them. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that. And people that can't cope, and you're taken onto a craft most of the time, where you're terrified. You're in an area that you're not used to, strange creatures, strange everything. And they do some medical tests at times that just don't seem to fit the bill because you haven't approved of it. And so again, loss of control, and all of the above. So the fear factor is just huge for a lot of people.
I'm reading it right here from one of my off podcasts. Chief complaint, invasion of privacy. That's his chief complaint out of everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
but what if one of those entities walked up to you and said, "Hey, excuse me a minute. I need to insert some things, and I need this and that. I want a piece of your flesh for biological study." Right. You're going to look at them and do what? You're going to run.
Well, I'm different. I don't know. If an alien walked to my house right now and said, "Listen, we need to probe. We need to cut some stuff up," I'm going to be like, "Well, hold on. What do I get out of this?" Because I have no problem with that. If you have this is just me speaking, but if you have that kind of advanced technology, I need some stuff in return. And by all means, take what you need. I won't even tell anybody.
Right.
That's just my. I don't know. I'm a very different kind of person with that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and Bill, I don't know have you ever met? He's passed away now, but Paul Hellyer, Minister of Defense of Canada for quite some time.
Never had the pleasure of meeting him. Definitely know his legend.
He's was a pretty interesting gentleman in explaining, if it is fact, Eisenhower gave some of us away, thinking he would have control because they had a deal and a contract and it was going to stick. And it didn't. You've got entities who have power above and beyond what we do. And they made a deal because they wanted some of us to take to their planet, if this is true. And what did we get in return? The contract didn't end and they continued to take us.
Huh. I gotta say, I mean, it sounds like it could be plausible, but I would have to wonder, like, would we offer a deal to a lesser we didn't even offer deals when we came to America. You know what I mean? We just said, all right, well, we're here and we're going to take issue and we're going to take your land. And later on, at the end of that, the deal is, all right, well, you get here's some casinos and some land and, are bad. So maybe, I don't know, would a much more sophisticated intelligence cut a deal with us? It's not impossible if they're civilized. It's not impossible.
No, and apparently one was supposed to stay here. They took 13 of us, took away our social security numbers, gave them 3 numbers to be identified by. They didn't have family. So in the end, and I may not get this completely correct, but one died on the other planet. One died after he got back here from radiation sickness that he had developed, and a third one decided to stay on the planet. And that we had an entity of theirs who would teach us some of the higher technology that we've developed. So I don't know, anybody's guess.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I typically don't question the unknown because it's unknown and I don't know enough to question. What I can say is, again, I watch a lot of documentaries. I read a lot about space. And by looking at the cosmic web and getting an idea of how there's dark energy, to travel to other planets with a more advanced technology, I don't think it requires propulsion. I don't at all. Not even maybe a portal, but maybe if you think about how light travels, and all right, so hit an example: fiber optic cables, sending information. Then look at a cosmic web and some of the different energies that are out there. Maybe it's possible that they're just literally moving along a fiber optic cable to another location, instant information transfer. So I don't doubt a lot of those things. The biggest pushback I always have is when I hear people say things like, well, they want us to protect the planet. They want us to keep our planet whole. And, to a degree that might be true, but ultimately they're protecting their study, which is us and the other things that live here. I think the only really reason they would intervene with a nuclear war is just so they can't let them blow each other up, because that's the channel planet Earth. It's very interesting. Crazy stuff happens there, and now we're renting our little gray guys out to all the other species out there. We're going to lose. That's a big money loss for us, right? So, I mean, I don't mean to make jest, but that's how I look at it, because I always have to put myself in a position of the alien. What would they want to do? Is this a business? Are we being viewed and interpreted? The government, I don't know. Bill, what did you think about that disclosure, June?
Well, I think it was a marketing campaign trying to get out ahead of the story that right. It's becoming more and more evident every day that there's, that we're being visited.
Right.
There's a lot better cell phone pictures and videos now. Science is beginning to really support just the many, many number of planets that are out there or moons that are habitable. And so I think they're in Washington, they're thinking, wow, one day, and that day is going to be soon. This is going to be undeniable. So let's start a marketing campaign to say that we are not only on the side of disclosure, we're leading it. First of all, as part of this campaign, they scrubbed the word UFO, replaced it with UAP.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about UFOs, you're a nut job, but UAP, that's the official term now.
Yeah.
We're at the head of the table, and you're going to use our term for it if you want to be part of the discussion. And then the videos they showed are out over the Atlantic, out over the Pacific, not over mainland anywhere,
Right.
just to sort of like tease out, like, look at these UFOs that are technically on Earth, but nowhere near where you live. So don't panic. But we're just showing you these.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think incrementally, year after year, the information will drip out till maybe, who knows how long it'll take them to feel comfortable, maybe 10 years. And then if disclosure is something that happens and people say, you know, darn you, government, you've been hiding this from us forever. And they're like, no, we haven't. Look, every year we tell you new UFO stuff. We're on your side. We're leading this. Yeah, and I think that's what I think about it.
I think you're right about that. I'll tell you why, because I'm glad you said that about the oceans. A friend of mine asked me, goes, why are there governments, you know, we do testing over in the country. Why don't we ever, are there any videos of that? And my answer to him was probably, and I'm glad you said it. If we did have video over our country of UFOs over land, they would definitely not release that because panic would definitely ensue after that. Or flip side of panic, there's people like me. We're going to race there. Now I got to go see it. I can go see it. You know what I mean? The other part is I think they're going to have to speed up the process of disclosure. More of it. Private industry is going to space, and not just Elon anymore. A lot of the billionaires clubs, it's the race. Who's going to have the rocket? I mean, William Shatner went up. And you don't think that a bunch of other billionaires are like, well, I need to do this. It's time. And they're not going to be if they see something up in space or wherever they see it and it's filmed, to them, that's not, they're not worried about an oath and they're not going to be suppressed. That's a YouTube viral video in their eyes. Right. And some of these billionaires, and I said this a lot, they'll turn that into an everyday channel with the UFOs, period. Now the thing is about the life itself, right? The intelligence behind the wheel, that might be longer down the road. I think UFOs, UAPs, I think in the next 5 years, it becomes common knowledge. These are real. They exist. We don't know who's driving yet, but we know these are here. And I think we'll be at 100% agreeing across the world at some point soon. Then the next thing is going to be, who's driving it? Who's in control? And then they'll string that along for however long they're going to string it along for. Sound about right?
I think so. Bill, don't you agree that it may not even be our government that discloses it? They may be sitting there and going to do a big oops. All these people know, and now they're telling us, isn't that wonderful? I could see that happening.
Yeah. What I could also see, strangely enough, is say like some bigger government out there, like say Russia or China says, okay, we're being visited. And then the other countries aren't on board with disclosure and it becomes this big geopolitical issue.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I never even considered that. Oh my God. Yeah, talk about having more reasons for us to divide and fight, right? Good Lord. Well, before we close tonight, everyone, let's, all right, I guess before we close, I'm going to ask each of you one question. We'll start with Denise. What do you think the alien is exactly? Like, what's your theory on it?
My theory is, especially the ET that's been with me since I was 2.5, he is a being. We're humans. You want to call him an entity, whatever you want to call him, from another planet, from another place. They're just a little bit more advanced than we are. And there are many. Just think of the galaxies and the universe. And how could we be the only ones? As I've heard that said so many times, and I happen to agree with it. But he's just a person.
Yeah. On that note, real quick, I felt maybe, 2 weeks ago, I watched a documentary and it gave me some time to think. And I remember feeling very small and insignificant afterward. I was learning about the universe. And so you see our solar system and then our galaxy and then how many more galaxies are in the universe. And then to learn that or a theory anyway, that we're a bubble of many bubbles of universes. When I sat down and tried to contemplate or understand the size of that, the scale, I remember feeling kind of sad. I was like, I felt really insignificant. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely does.
The scale, the size of it, the sheer size of the infinite universe. I felt really small. I remember feeling pretty, I had to watch something happy right after that, because I'm one of those people. I overthink. Bill, your thoughts? What are your theories on the alien?
First of all, so with your mentioning about all those universes out there,
yep.
If say, for example, the Milky Way, I remember with Hubble, one of the things that they were saying is that Hubble is finding out that like 1 in every 6 stars has a potential habitable planet or moon around it. And if by one estimate, there's about 300 billion stars in the Milky Way, that means there's about 50 billion potentially habitable planets or moons just in our galaxy alone. And then Hubble also could only see about 100 billion galaxies out there only. but I guess it estimated that there were actually 2 trillion galaxies out there. Now, it may be either 100 million or 100 billion. I'm pretty sure it's 100 billion, but that it could see. But it estimated that there were 2 trillion galaxies out there. Now, if all of those galaxies are a lot like ours, with 50 billion potentially habitable planets or moons, the figure came out to 100 sextillion potentially habitable planets or moons out there. So pretty good odds that we're not alone.
Oh, no, no doubt of that. I mean, when someone asked me, long before I even thought about UFOs and what my reality on that is, when I was asked about life elsewhere, I said, absolutely. Because when I was a kid and learning about what Hubble discovered, etc., I don't think about advanced life forms. I think about us. I think about us prior. There's got to be planets out there where they're in their Stone Age, they're in their Bronze Age, they're just now starting to work with the radio. I mean, what is it, 100,000 years for a radio wave to cross just a galaxy? 100,000 years? We haven't even been broadcasting that long. So...
Yeah, and with the Webb telescope now getting into position, that's going to open this can even wider. And to answer your other question about my thoughts on them, at least from the perspective of that I've seen personally, I think that their consciousness, in their primary form, and they can inhabit physical bodies to interact with us when they need to physically. But otherwise, I think they exist in a state of consciousness.
I like even with Denise, what she's seeing it. When I say biomechanical robot, it means the exterior is completely biological. And like what Bill's saying, when he's saying consciousness, and that's part of my theory as well. It's a consciousness upload. They're taking over this biological creature that's developed by them for the purpose of getting near us, because them themselves might not be able to come near us because of disease, can't breathe the air, they don't like Florida, I mean, a lot of factors. So I think, I'm not downplaying anyone's idea, but I have to believe, or I think anyway, my own theory is the advanced biological robot is a harness of the intelligence inside of it, and we wouldn't be able to discern the difference. One running theory anyway. Well, Bill, Denise, is there anything else you guys want to add?
No, I think, well, the only thing I would say is keep looking up, keep reporting, allowing us to help you. So that's what I have to say.
Excellent. Bill, you?
Sure. Yeah. If you have seen a UFO, please report it to MUFON. Or have had other type of a related encounter. If you want to be an investigator for MUFON, also MUFON.com is the best place to go for that. And if you're looking to network with local people who are also interested in the UFO phenomena, if you are, check out your state chapter of MUFON. You could pretty much type in your state and MUFON and find a website for your state chapter there. Or there's a list of state chapters also at MUFON's MUFON.com.
Thank you, Bill.
Bill is perfect. Bill, Denise, it was a pleasure as always. I'm sure we're going to do it again, and I look forward to it. And you guys have a good night.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
You too, Adam.